2020
didn't
school
sign up
board
for
meeting
this.
to order. Okay, we're gonna do roll call now.
Hey,
Kathy McGrath. Here. Neil Thomascott. Here. Ben Martinson. Here. Terry Hildebrandt, I am here, and John Dobbin. Here. Here we go. Okay, first item on the agenda, consider approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. A motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Next item is President's report. All board members are in attendance tonight in person. And the next board meeting is on Wednesday, July 8th, and the next one in August would be August 12th. All right. Next item on our agenda is administrative reports. The first one is summer planning for school reopening. Superintendent Cronin.
Good evening. I'll just come out in front and talk this evening. So, best thing I can tell you is multiple contingencies are what we are working on for fall planning. To begin with, the Wood County District Administrators, so all the district administrators with Wood County, met with the Wood County Health Department yesterday morning to begin that discussion on what reopening will look like in Wood County in the fall. While I do not want to speak on behalf of the Wood County Health Department, it is evident, to me at least from that meeting, that they're still very concerned about doing our best in Wood County to prevent and mitigate potential outbreaks of COVID-19. They're willing to work with each of the schools to help us facilitate reopening in the fall. Specifically, what that looks like at this moment is still very much a topic of discussion and is going to require some flexible thinking on our part as a school district. There are many variables and unknowns over the next several months, and it is probably at this point near impossible to predict what's going to happen over the course of the next 2 months. With that said, though, I want to begin to outline some possible scenarios for moving forward. Reopening in the fall, first off, in the many discussions that I've attended online, the many meetings, the very many meetings, it seems like there are basically three scenarios that districts are looking at. First is full reopening of school, but with added safety, sanitation measures, some semblance of social distancing when possible, and limiting exposure of students to non-school personnel. For instance, things like basically complete restrictions on visitors, volunteers, and those things where we don't allow others into the facilities. The second possibility may be something I would call akin to a hybrid reopening. That's the ability, a hybrid might be more of the idea of what would be called blended learning. Some days in school, some days not in school, and a blend of virtual on the off days when not in school. Probably a very logistically difficult thing to think through, and quite frankly, logistically difficult for probably parents and families. But that is one of the options that schools are looking at. The third option, of course, is what we've just left, which is virtual learning. However, for me, when I think virtual learning, I think of something now that will look completely different than what we did in the fall. If we would have to come back to virtual learning, it will have to look different. It cannot be what we left in the spring. It cannot be what happened in the last 3 months. It will have to be something completely different. Most schools are looking at the virtual learning not as their primary option, not as where they want to start with, but as a fallback position in case there has to be a school closure due to an outbreak in a school. And again, even there, I would want to develop that to make that look completely different than what we just left. Beyond these three scenarios, obviously many details have to be worked out. All three of them, though, span increased cleaning, sanitation, and health practices. We'll need to continue to shore up our total cleaning routines. We'll likely need to increase our daily cleaning of common areas, and we will continue to install hand sanitizing stations throughout and provide cleaning materials throughout the facilities. We are able to get a lot of those materials at this time and are looking at acquiring those things now that they're becoming available to device. Further, our principals and our teaching staff will have to work to develop teaching strategies for online learning, and we'll need to develop contingencies in case we're faced with a future school closure. We will likely also, I shouldn't say may, we will also likely need to develop plans for students who are restricted from coming to school. A student with an underlying health condition may be restricted, not able to come to school if there is the risk of an outbreak of COVID. And so in those cases, again, we have to develop contingencies. How are we going to educate those students? I could see us simultaneously not only teaching in person, but also broadcasting through Zoom meeting or Skype or some other method some of our classes as needed. We may need to adjust those attendance procedures as well to deal with that. So there's a lot of those contingencies out there that we have to work on. In terms of student activities such as athletics, the WIA has not yet extended specific guidance to schools on how we'll resume it. Quite frankly, despite there being some youth sports continuing, the health department at the moment, at least it was clear in our meeting yesterday, is not recommending those activities start yet. Obviously, this is a delicate topic. It's going to cause some level of frustration amongst our community members, our staff, our parents, probably mostly our students who want to get back into the swing of things. We are looking at how to facilitate some level, again, of restarting those activities, and possibly even during July, if possible. Even if it's small groups of students who are able to, come in and have an open gym for basketball. But again, we may have to have some level of mitigation efforts going on and whatnot. But until we receive some more specific guidance, I hesitate to do that yet. Mr. Stumpole tomorrow is attending a meeting where some of those items will be discussed, and he and I are going to talk after that. Beyond attending a lot of meetings, where most of these topics have been discussed ad nauseum, there are preliminary steps we have begun to take. We are still waiting for further guidance from the Department of Public Instruction, but in the meantime, we're beginning our planning processes. We're in the process of developing a parent survey that we hope to put out to our parents within the next week to give us some insight locally as to the thought processes that our parents are having on what they feel safe doing in schools, procedures, sending their students back. I've heard numbers from across the state, anywhere from 10% to 30% of students may not return in the fall. I don't know that that locally will bear out, especially considering our being a bit more rural. That may not play out with those kinds of numbers. But again, we need to ask our parents, what are their intentions? Asking them what they're looking for from us in terms of protective measures for their students. Further, we're developing several working groups that are going to make recommendations to the administrative team that we will certainly bring to you and discuss with you as to what that reopening will look like, the mitigation efforts we'll take, and those kinds of items. The working groups will be comprised of teaching staff, our nurse, our maintenance staff, our food service staff, right down the line of different groups of staff who will have different pieces of input. We're fully aware at each school that we need to prepare differently for this fall, again, than we've ended this past year. We know that we cannot revert back to pass-fail systems, and staff need to be prepared to grade, take attendance, and be proactive in planning classes to be flexible both in person and broadcast via some other means or virtually. Further, from an infrastructure standpoint, as I mentioned, we're working to acquire additional protective equipment, sanitation equipment. We're also working on acquiring more one-to-one devices, more Chromebooks and items that we can use and issue to students to increase our connectivity to students. One of the things we did hear from some families was that struggle to have one computer and 3 kids. How does everybody get online? We're starting with that middle, so we already have those devices to cover our high school. We do have some more devices on hand that were meant to be classroom sets that can be shared across the board from classroom to classroom. But we're really looking to push now to move to a more one-to-one basis in the middle school. Our initial read on this is these won't be issued permanent devices. Well, they might be issued to a student that they would have during the school day, but they're not issued as a take-home device unless it's necessary. As well, increasing those capacities in the elementary so we can backfill where we had needs in the elementary. We're already working on reallocating some grant dollars through our Title IV grant that way, and making sure that our future Title IV grants that can be spent on that are allocated that way. And we're looking at potentially allocating some of our money from the CARES Act to make sure that we're able to acquire those items. As I can conclude, in returning and preparing and prepping for this return in the fall, one of the concerns is obviously also returning our staff and efforts to make sure our staff remain safe. And again, we're looking at adjustments to staff procedures, possibly policy adjustments, and possibly even some staffing positions to make sure that we're doing all we can to keep the staff safe, to keep our students safe, and to carry out our overall school mission, that idea of improving America's future one student at a time. With that, I'm going to say expect in July to see some more specific plans from us on the reopening and for potential changes to some policies and procedures. In July, I'm going to prepare you now, we will have our biannual policy update. Not the most fun thing to sit through, but we will be starting that in July. We'll have several items that are related to the normal ebb and flow of our policy in those updates, but there will likely be some changes that will be necessary to ensure, again, that we can safely reopen. I may ask you in July to waive your board policy on the number of meetings to approve those policies, or at least some of those. We may try to expedite some of those changes. And as you waived policy a couple of months ago to expedite some changes, we may ask you to do that again. We're, again, engaging with parents in communication. We're going to look at polling and work on that and seeing, surveying our parents and engaging our staff for their input. I want to close with one of the things in the last day, we did put out some parent communication this afternoon to our families. It was just a very short statement expressing our, from a district standpoint, basically our disappointment and sadness in the fact that Verso's announced that shutdown of the Wisconsin Rapids Mill at the end of July. We have posted on our district website a set of resources that families can access who may need assistance. We will, some very short conversations at the moment, but some conversations with the Wisconsin Rapids School District. Yesterday a little bit as well with regard to Nakusa, but figuring out are there some things we can do together to make sure that from a Southland County perspective this is going to have a big impact, and are there things we can do to work together on that. So with that, didn't mean for that to be all over the place. I wanted to give that to you very bluntly. And kind of cover several things. If you have questions.
Probably not until it gets closer and there's more
Yep.
known and more requirements or whatever.
Yeah, I keep getting the feeling we keep pushing back our, school districts have been, from at least the district administrator side, from the principal side, our principals have been working to put that last month in the books. From the district administrator side, I definitely sense in a lot of meetings that want to take a step forward. The unfortunate thing is we have not gotten a lot of definites on taking that step forward. There's still things that are all over the board. So,
obviously, nobody knows on certain, but do they have a time frame when we let families know moving into next year? I mean, we think get early July would have a definite answer.
I think it's going to be more mid to late July. maybe even early August. I don't know that we're going to have. I would like to think that we will have some semblance of the direction we're headed by then, all the depth. So yeah, at least from a directional standpoint, yes, I think we can start getting that out. And I've certainly, to a few parents that I've talked with and whatnot at this point about this, certainly I'm hearing from the parents, I don't want to homeschool again. My wife's a teacher and she doesn't want to homeschool again. I get that. But we obviously have a lot of things that we need to make sure we've checked the box on. And we've got to get some blessing from the people up at the health department as to what we're doing.
They have to realize that the kids are not getting anywhere close to an education by being at home.
Yeah.
Especially the younger kids. I mean, for them to have missed what they missed this year.
Yes.
And to go into part of next year, again, everybody at the elementary, probably twofold versus, they're probably even into middle school now. Junior high and up, to a degree, they're okay, but the elementary absolutely needs that.
And that's one of the things that I know from the principal standpoint and discussion is with teaching, with teachers and our teaching, everybody is literally everybody, with the exception of a few. Most of our staff is going to have to take a couple of steps back to start the year. They're not going to be able to dive in where they've dove in the past. We know they're going to have to step back, see where the kids are at, and try to meet them at that point, because we know they're not going to be where they've been in the past. The exceptions to that rule might be Mr. Burno in welding, probably dive in on day one where he normally would. But if it's math, some of the English, some of the reading, especially down in the, as you said, in the middle of the elementary, we're definitely going to have to take a step back, assess where we're starting, and make sure we're meeting the kids.
Take that into consideration when they are making their decisions.
Yes.
Well, it's the
Oh, and that's why I say our starting point is reopening in the fall. That's where I want to start all of our discussions. That's our goal. We are going to need to plan for the multiple contingencies, but goal number one is starting in the fall.
and I obviously know
Yep.
that. So here's somebody else's thought.
Yesterday, NPR did a story on White College. They compared it to the 44,000 students at Madison, and the 1,900 in Louisville Lake. They had provost from the White College on. They created a contingency plan for next fall that they call the Edge. Instead of teaching their semester-long classes, they have cut them into 6- and 7-week blocks, and they cut in the middle, so if they have to cancel the first half of the semester, they can do the second half. It's one of those other arrangements that are out there that works in a small,
Yep.
you can't do that with 44,000 students that we don't need that.
So, and what we do here, there will be some similarities to what happens in Rapids or in Houston. There will also be some differences. It is the one thing we need to wrap our minds around though too is when, I'm going to say when we get a case of COVID, whether it's amongst the staff or amongst the students, we're probably shutting the doors for at least a few days. Potentially up to a couple of weeks, but at least a few days. And, so that's, and then trying to deal in the middle of that with, it becomes cold and flu season and the child becomes sick in the middle of the day. So do 3 of the buddies. But it's all the flu, or it's all, we're going to have a lot of just trying to figure out how those procedures are all going to work. So,
And testing, will testing be available,
yeah.
like you say, on the spot? Or
This will be available.
One of the things that will become difficult, the county right now wants to try to trace all the contacts. One of our middle school students gets COVID, or one of our middle school teachers. I don't think that becomes almost an impossible task, even in our little school. It's even more impossible in Wisconsin Rapids. So it'll be interesting. as we work with the health department, the other schools, as to how we step through this minefield of reopening in the fall. So, again, I want my kids back in school and doing what they can. I, from a parent standpoint, understand that, and definitely from an administrator standpoint, I understand it. The other side of my administrator standpoint is, got to make sure we do the same thing. So, okay.
Thank you. Next report is summer school update. Principal Christie.
So, originally we had, when we knew we couldn't have summer school in June at the elementary school, we had decided to offer 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks in August, to try to do a little, jump start with the anticipation that we'd be starting the school year normally. So we had kids sign up, and we left it open, it's still open, in fact, we never get a few more. Not a huge sign up like we normally do for June. I think partly because people didn't know where they would be. Lots of varying factors, understandably. Right now, we are looking at possibly going from a full day summer school to maybe shortening it to a half day, because thinking maybe we can fill a half day's worth. I don't think we have enough kids to do a full day. So next week we're going to look at a half day schedule. I polled the teachers that signed up to teach summer school to see if they'd still be willing to do just a morning. So serve kids breakfast, do two morning sessions, serve them lunch, and then send them home. Again, making sure that parents still would be interested if we just did a half day. And so we're going to look at that option next week, see if that's a possibility, maybe put some schedules together. Again, with parents knowing that this may not happen at all, but we need to have it. We would like to put it together as a just-in-case option, with everyone understanding that it may get canceled if we can't do it at all. So everything just like the school year and fall sports and so on and so forth is up in the air. But we're still hopeful that we could possibly do that the first 2 weeks in August. So next week we're going to try to put a plan B together. Plan A of the whole day probably isn't going to work. It just doesn't. There's just not enough kids to make it feasible and financially. It just doesn't make sense. To maybe a half day. Hopefully we can make that work. So that's our next attempt, and I'm hoping that we can do that just to give kids a little boost, at least to get them back in the building. Hopefully the first 6 months. So that's where we're at right now with that, and then hopefully so.
Are the numbers of activities or classes that you're going to offer pared down, or?
I think about the same. We're just going to have less, where we had 80-some kids in the past, there's only about 40-some kids signed up, so instead of having 4 sessions of fishing, we're only going to offer 2 sessions of fishing. Or 4 sessions of play, we're only going to offer 2 sessions of play. So that will we should hopefully make it just as many offerings, just less kids, less sessions.
Any other questions?
I know, I missed them.
Thank you. And next item is summer activities, Principal Proto.
I just want to start a little bit with wrapping up the school year. This is really hard for educators because I think they're planners. And like Kyle said, we're living day by day, week by week. But we are planning some things. He told me to give the students and teachers a couple weeks rest. Some of the kids are still finishing incompletes to earn their credits. We decided there were so many of them so close. When we left, it was a spring break week, and that made it difficult because they didn't start right away. So at the end of March, we were calling home, we were calling parents. So we're still wrapping. A lot of teachers are working this week and wrapping up incompletes with kids. And we kind of needed that because when we look at summer school, not knowing it, and if we don't have summer school recovery, they'll be retaking classes. So we needed that, and bless all the teachers that are doing that. And then in a couple weeks, kind of like what Kyle had said, we're looking at, we talked about new curriculum. Well, some of our old curriculum, we were worried about the online rights expiring. So we're looking to make sure that, at least in high school, if that does happen and we have to take a couple weeks off, that we are ready to go with online, rights of our textbooks and privileges and everything. So we're looking at that. And the teachers are mentally thinking different. When we left in spring, it was kind of this is what we're going to do. So a lot of them are looking into training, and we're looking into, we have Infinite Campus, and they're looking into opportunities with Google, what matches, what's available. So we've got to kind of up our ante on all of our things that we're doing, and we know that. I mean, we survived spring, but we've got to be prepared now for a lot of different teaching, you know. So they're doing a great job of that. We're talking about technology and other programs we're looking into. After all of this happened, CISA had some mental health Zooms and some teaching Zooms, and we're reviewing or reflecting on a lot of things we could or should did. So we're trying to put some of those things in place. Not that we did anything bad, but we know there's better now. And we're kind of getting the swing of things, I think. So a lot of teachers are doing that. We put some dates out there. Again, Kyle asked Kara and I to come in the meeting yesterday. Now I understand why he walks out a little bit different mood, because I'm like, this is good, you know. And of course, they've got to lay out the foundation. We've set a prom date, I've told you, for July 25th. We've set a graduation date. We've got yearbooks going out this week. At the end of the month or year, or summer, they'll be ready to celebrate. We're being optimistic. We're putting it out there so the kids know it, the parents know it. We have plan A, B, C, and D, but also we've told them that if the health department comes in and says you can't do this, this, and this, there might be no plan. So I mean, we're trying to be optimistic, and like I said, it's difficult because I like to say prom is normal. There might be no slow dancing. That's too close, you know. I mean, to be realistic, there's going to be silly things that we've just got to put in place. We don't have the answers yet, and that's what I keep telling people. We're just trying to pre-plan and stay optimistic. And I think that's about it, unless you have any questions. We worry, and I think putting it out there and planning gives some, like I said, being optimistic, because, working with Jen in the counseling department, Jen Moore, I think that's important, like for people's mental health. They've got to have that. The kids, the parents, as much as, tomorrow the WIA is having that meeting about sports. Some kids keep their grades going and are here every day because of a sport. Whatever it might be, whatever it is that keeps them going through the day and positive. And when we start taking all that away, it's going to be really devastating to the kids. So just got to be patient and optimistic, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Next item is questions and comments from people in attendance. Did anyone sign up? I didn't check the sheet. Does anyone wish to address the board? Okay. Next item is moving on to the consent agenda. Number 5, seek approval of minutes for past meetings of May 13th and May 21st. So moved. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Number 6, consider approval of financial reports. Are there any gifts?
Nothing to report tonight.
No gifts? Okay. So I take a motion to approve the financial reports.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carried. Next item is unfinished business. Number 7, second reading of updated policy number 6116, time and effort reporting.
This one is directly related to the COVID experience. It has to deal with federal grant monies and following the guidance that the federal government gave within the CARES Act. This is directly from the Department of Public Instruction, the change that they're looking to see in everybody's policy to make sure that all the schools are still eligible to receive all the grant funds.
Take a motion to approve that.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion is approved. Moving on to new business, consider approval of 2020-2021 co-curricular staffing plan.
To this co-curricular staffing plan, your approval tonight allows us to release the letters of commitment for those coaches to them and advisors to them. Really, the only change, and I had mentioned in my board report to you, that I sent to you, well, probably a bigger change comes with the athletic director, Mr. Steltenpohl, and adjusting his contract to account for the fact that he will intend to be the primary event supervisor moving forward. And basically, with him doing all the supervision, that most of it, we've had that conversation that we may not be able to do quite all of it, but we can make arrangements if there's a time when he needs to not be there. I'd ask for the approval of those contracts or those commitment letters with that adjustment from last year's.
So moved.
Second it.
Moved by Catherine, seconded by Carrie. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Motion carried. Number 9, consider approval of food service and maintenance recognition.
So I come to you tonight asking that you approve some recognition for our food service staff and our maintenance staff. Two slightly different recognitions that I'm looking at, but as you may have seen in the report I put to you, these two groups of employees have continued their on-site duties throughout the entire school closure. First, though, I want to talk about the food service staff. Quite frankly, they've gone above, and I want them to hear this, they've gone above and beyond the call of duty over the past several weeks in the performance of their duties. They've converted from a cafeteria system to a to-go system of food service. At the peak, food service staff has served over 2,500 meals a week, all to go. Additionally, the staff has had to create production lines, has had to overcome challenges in their supply chain. Since March 16th, this group has been on the front line as well of the COVID response at PESD and has had regular interaction with our students and parents. This group has risen above and beyond their normal call of duty and performed at a high level. As a result, I would like to ask your permission as the board to issue gift certificates to those staff members. The gift certificates would be purchased in a way that is commensurate with their hours worked and is a bit more significant than the typical food service appreciation gift certificates. With regard to the school maintenance staff, they too have continued their duties throughout the school closure. Maintenance staff has worked to continue their regular hours and has been critical in working to put in place safety and sanitation procedures already this year to allow the district to mitigate potential exposure to COVID and just in recognition of their continued dedication to keeping the schools clean and forging ahead. They had some foresight of forging us ahead in several projects, as well a series of gift certificates given to that staff. That staff, I'm proposing those certificates just be set level across the board.
I'll make a motion to consider the food service and our maintenance recognition.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Just want to thank them. I was both ends did a lot of work, a lot of good things from the village and the area for what you guys have done during lunch hours, and so appreciate it.
Nothing short of amazing.
Thank you. Welcome. All right, with that, call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Next item is consider approval of alteration to 2020-2021
I'm asking your approval of the alteration of two things for note. One is for note first. Health aide. Our health aide has indicated she will not be returning. As we have our discussions on returning to school in the fall, we may come to you with some adjustments for how our health services staff looks this fall. And so I just note that here. I'm not asking to change anything there yet. That may come. What I am asking is that you empower me to name a head of maintenance. I believe that that will help us in our quest to make sure that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing within our maintenance department and through the schools. It'll allow us to hopefully consolidate some of what we're doing, and so we're not repeating calls to vendors and those items between the different leads that we've had over the years. For the past several years, we've not had a head of maintenance. Not creating a new position, this will be named from within.
I make a motion to consider approval of alternation to 2020-21 supporting staff.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Yes, because we're not changing anything that you would have any kind of.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Next item. Consider approval of non-resident pupil or pupils 2020-2021 school year open enrollment application.
So the outs are pretty easy to tell you about because you just approve those. There's nothing else we have to do there. It's more of a formality. In open enrollment, and of course, as we always talk, none of these are guaranteed that they're coming here. They're just, in fact, they could have applied to more than one school. We do have one denial, though, based on our special education caseload count, and I can't name that person obviously in here, but on the list of open enrollment, the denial will be that particular student due to space restrictions in special education.
Is there a motion to approve the non-resident pupil open enrollment application?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion is approved. Next item is authorize 2020-2021 spending at 2019-2020 budget levels beginning July 1st, 2020.
Well, we do actually have a state budget in place at the moment. And I say that at the moment because I believe there will be a budget reconciliation bill that will change the current state budget that will come at some point. The worst case scenario, I'm just going to tell you this right now, in terms of budget reconciliation, would be if the budget is reconciled after November 1st. It is a big possibility that we may not have a budget reconciliation until after November 1st. The reason that is a major problem is we will have already set our tax levy in our budget because we'll have had to by then statutorily. We're not planning any big increases in spending over the last year at this moment. I do believe we are okay fiscally based on a couple of factors. One is our average enrollment over the past several years has been climbing. So that still leaves us on a formula for school finances in a positive position. Number two is that our referendum is there and allows us to make it filled that deficit for us that we had. We have certainly carried on with all of the priorities we've listed in the referendum. We've worked on the curriculum, we've worked on deferred maintenance projects. We've done the things that we said that we were going to do. We filled our operational needs. So we would continue to do that with those dollars. Work on curriculum, work on those operational needs, those maintenance needs. We because we still have quite a path to do. So I believe those two things probably leave us in a strong budget position moving into next year, but I am not confident enough to say that we could increase our budget for next year by any means. So this, you would just simply be passing a resolution that allows us to start the fiscal year until we pass our formal and final budget.
Make the motion to consider approval of release of 2020-21 purchase orders.
And that's more above it.
Authorize 2021 spending at 2019-20 budget levels.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Next item is consider approval of release of 2020-2021 purchase orders.
This is just a formality that allows us to continue purchasing into the next budget year.
Seek a motion to approve purchase orders.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Next item is consider approval of 2020-2021 elementary handbook.
Ms. Crystal, I'll let you.
Not many changes with our elementary handbook. We're keeping it status quo as far as, anything that we have changes as far as that will happen this school year with COVID things, obviously, in there. This is just our standard handbook. Most things were just wording, things that needed a little streamlining. Other than our morning milk, we went to, instead of a huge chunk of money, we can now use our campus system to take it out on a daily basis to help their morning milk count. Other than that, it was just basically a couple words here and there, just kind of streamlining some of the wording. So it was a pretty easy changes this year. So unless there's any questions, there's not a ton changes.
Sure makes sense to do that development on there soon.
It wasn't an option before. Before we had to do it with the check that way, and now we have the ability to do it the daily. So that will make things much easier.
It's going to help our food service office.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Is there a motion to approve the elementary handbook 2020-2021?
Second.
Motion by Kathy, second by Ben. All those in favor of the motion say aye. 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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carried. Next item is to consider approval of restructure of middle school music and RTI offerings.
Mrs. Schroeder is going to lead on this item.
I think. I had people proofread this, and after I did it, they said they might have way more questions. I learned this year too. So in middle school, we kind of have a dominoes effect. One class affects another class. We're doing some great things. We need to keep moving. We need to make small steps. A couple years ago, we had a lot of transition with our Spanish, as you remember. We're back on target with Spanish. We've had a teacher a couple years. The department's growing. We would like to do, the kids have 7th and 8th grade Spanish, earn a high school credit, and then they would be able to skip freshman or Spanish 1 and go right into Spanish 2, but other kids would still be able to take Spanish 1 in high school too if you were a freshman. So it moves them ahead, it gives them a little bit better opportunity, still is available for the rest of the high school kids. We also do that with algebra with the 8th graders. We prep them in 8th grade. If they're prepared, phenomenal, because then they have more time at the end of their junior, senior year for electives and choices and maybe even take mid-state classes. We have 2 new, the whole band and choir department are new, and they have plans to proceed and take off, and we want them to be able to do that. On the other end, we gained some RTI help this year, and kind of in the middle of the year, but we're seeing success with it. Mr. Erdman's been doing that. We're lucky to have him interested in that and the band choir, have a band choir degree. So we would like, the choir teacher would like more opportunity to focus on the kids that want to perform and are serious, as opposed to those that are just hanging out and need it, because it's a requirement in middle school. So utilizing what I put here as a package, we might get the best of both worlds for all those kids. The only thing I am trying to cut down, and I kind of rolled into that, and I was surprised at how many study halls we're offering. Now that we have that Blackhawk, that's utilized properly. Teachers are available. They have half an hour at the end of the day to get help, to get organized. Teachers also give up their lunch or after school, and academics should be a priority before rushing to practice. So the study halls weren't being utilized. We were paying out a lot of money. So we're trying to cut back on those and put them in programs where we think they'll excel. The kids will. Mainly affects, or mostly affects, the 7th and 8th grade. And we might incorporate that later in scheduling in years to come at the 5, 6. The only ones that we will look to put maybe to have a study hall would be those that are excelling in 8th grade in a Spanish high school class and an algebra class. We would give them the opportunity, because they'll probably need it, for a study hall. But we got to cut back our study halls and, like I said, put them in classes where they're learning. So it's kind of a dominoes effect, but because he's got multi-talents here, if we would increase his employment, we might get a lot of positive things from it. Do you have any questions? Because I had to draw this out as a map. So this might look confusing, but it all falls together, I promise.
One of the things that there have been concerns expressed about in the transition to our new music staff over the years is opportunities for kids, and I'm really glad to see that they're doing well. These are positive steps. I could go with either of the proposals, but I would lean toward option A, bring in full speed and maximize the amount of opportunity here. And we're going to make a motion to that effect if the rest of the board agrees.
You really just have to make a motion. You can't ask the board if they agree before you make the motion.
Well, and one thing I want to tell you,
Anybody can second it.
I guess personally, now I have a junior, so I'm starting to live through this, and I kind of pushed her, and boy, is she reaping the benefits from doing all that when she was young. So a lot of these parents have questions, and if it's their first child, they don't realize how it affects them later. You question it as a 7th grader, 8th grader, do they need this, should they take this, should I? And like I keep telling them, wait till they're a sophomore or junior, and it just does great things, so.
The RTI wouldn't be affected.
It
by
would.
option B.
We are trying, no, if you don't want to go that route. So we did reading this year, and the math teachers are knocking at our door. And he took on reading, which was enough. He worked with Natalie Brown, and she did an outstanding job in getting training. So if we would go ahead with this, of course, he'd look into more things this summer, and we would start that every other day. One day he would do general music, and then the next day he would have math RTI. So that would be new, if you go that percent, that option.
Well, I'll second Leo's motion.
I'll move that we adopt option A.
Okay.
I'll second that.
John will second it.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, take a vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carried. All right. Next item is opportunity for individual board member comment. Chairman Kathy.
I'd just like to thank Deanne Horsey for her 17 years of service to the district. And she had a very nice parade last week. And also, I went over to the elementary school, Kyle showed me around, and I'm really impressed with the new library and the kindergarten room. It looks great. Lots of wonderful things we're doing there.
Leo.
I would second Kathy's comment about Ms. Horsey. Dedication to working with her with some driving students over the years. As with many educators, and especially special educators, special education teachers, they go above and beyond any normal parameters to help the kids. And she was an exceptional example of that. And we were lucky to have her for the job we did. everybody to take a breath now that school is finally out. So many people here in the district from Kyle on down have been busting their butt to try to make this work. Food service, principals, the teachers, the kids, the parents. This is unprecedented. This is, I mean, last time we had anything like this was 100 years ago in the Spanish flu pandemic. And that killed 675,000 people in this country. We are close to that, thank God. When we get close to that, but, over the course of the summer, the desire to achieve normalcy is almost overwhelming. And we're not going to be normal until there's a vaccine, and we've got to be careful. I'm signing all of my emails with my initials, and then DDDS behind it. There isn't a dentist with a stutter. That's don't do dumb stuff. All we got to do is just be reasonable. You don't have to live in a cave or shooting the salesman as he comes up the walk, but we just have to be reasonable. And you know, dancing on the bar and drinking each other's brandy old fashions is probably not the best plan to do that. So just be safe, be reasonable, and we'll all be okay.
Thank you. Matt?
I just want to thank all the teachers and staff, like everybody else does, did previous, Kathy and Leo. Big congratulations to the seniors. I know they haven't officially graduated, but most of them have got their time in, and congratulations to them. So it wasn't easy chore for them to finish up, so thanks to all them and their families to get that done. Hopefully we're on a good note with good things going on. We're talking about next year's school planning, prom, things like that coming in July, so hopefully the negativity that's been going on in the last couple months and the things we've heard earlier this week, we can start getting some positives moving forward. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you to Deanne for her service. Thank you for the work that the food service did over this time. That was very well appreciated by many families. And a lot of extra effort that you guys put in. And congratulations to the seniors. Unfortunately, they didn't get to finish maybe the way they wanted to. But from the ones that I've talked to, it didn't let them get them down. They have such a good, positive attitude, which is really nice to see. They could have had a little bit more of a sourness to themselves, and they just don't. So that's maybe a reflection on this school and staff and this community as to what kind of students come on. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank Dan for many years of service to the district, and had a different kind of year this year, but I'm confident the administration will work hard to put in a plan for this upcoming year, and we'll have a good plan going forward, and hopefully everybody has a great summer, enjoy it, and also I am going to be a delegate to the CCFI convention next Thursday via Zoom. So I'll report on that. The one-night convention. All right.
So you don't have to wear pants.
All right. Next item is establish future board meetings.
So I know you've got July, I think that's set. What I would ask is maybe we come back in July, and if we would need to have some flexibility with August, because sometimes we push
an extra one.
Sometimes we've pushed it back, sometimes we've had an extra one in there, and just maybe not jump quite as far as September yet. Let that play out a little bit. Leave the August date where it is, but maybe if we had to be flexible, ask. We'll try to get it on heads up.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Seek a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All